Hi everybody and welcome to That's Football. I'm Mark Goldbridge, and more financial fair play drama in the Premier League, specifically in relation to the relegation battle. The Athletic are reporting this morning that Everton again and Nottingham Forest are facing potential financial fair play breaches that could give them points deductions, and this obviously generates huge relegation drama, as well as what is your opinion on handing these points deductions out. Everton have already had a 10-point deduction which they are going to appeal. This was due to spending in the 21-22 period. This is now about 22-23, where Everton apparently again may have breached rules and therefore could duplicate, quite rightly, another 10-point deduction. If you give somebody a 10-point deduction for a certain breach and then someone else does it, you've set the precedent. We spoke about this on the initial video when we heard about this, and Nottingham Forest are apparently in the same situation as well. Look at the league table. You take 10 points off Nottingham Forest, they're second from bottom. You give another 10-point deduction to Everton, they're bottom. Everton would have a 20-point deduction if they got another 10-point deduction. Nottingham Forest, I don't think if you give them a 10-point deduction, they've got enough to get back out of trouble. So look, these are huge ramifications, and I suppose what we've got here is we're testing the integrity of this financial fair play system and whether it does have teeth. If you're an Everton or a Forest fan or a club that is potentially facing these sorts of breaches and points deductions, you're going to be dead against it. But also, you're going to look at it and go, what's that tumbleweed going past behind Mark Goldbridge? Yeah, it's light blue, just like behind me. Man City, what's going on there? But what we really have here is, do you want this happening in football? Do you want regulation whereby when clubs spend more money than they should, they face a breach, they face a punishment? At the end of the day, the Premier League is a competitive league and should have parameters and rules. And if teams taking part in that Premier League do not abide by those rules, they've got no divine right to appeal it and go, we're Everton, we're Manchester United. You know, you're in the Premier League. Nobody should be bigger than the Premier League. So I believe that, in my opinion, well, let me give you my opinion in a moment, because what I would say is that look, Newcastle were on about this last week, that they have the money to spend from the wealth of who owns them, but they can't legitimately spend it because they don't have the revenue, they don't have they simply, as a club, don't have the money within the rules to be able to bring that money in. If Newcastle earn £100 million, they can't inject £1 billion from their Saudi owners. It has to be done legitimately. So This is what people have moaned about for a long time because of Man City. And now that we're now implementing it, it's not impacting Man City at the moment, is it? Man City have had that 10 years of not being impacted, and now they are where they are, the biggest and best club in England. These rules are actually stopping Newcastle trying to emulate Man City, and they're damaging teams in the bottom who, let's be honest, Nottingham Forest spent a lot of money when they got promoted because they want to stay in the Premier League. The ironic thing is, because of that, they could end up getting a 10-point deduction that puts them out of the Premier League. Everton, again, well, I'm not too sure about the Everton situation. I don't know whether it's just bad running of the football club. They did spend a lot of money at one point, and they are trying to build a new stadium. So clubs are trying to be competitive, and you're always going to push the envelope. It's like an F1 car, isn't it? They have loads of rules about what you can and can't do, but throughout an F1 season, you'll see cars being looked at and checked, get race to race, and you know, breaches there because they've used that, the floor's too low, whatever. So football clubs are always going to push the envelope, so to speak, and I don't think you can argue with that. In sporting excellence, it's always about those marginal gains, isn't it? But the other clubs that abide by the rules are going to quite rightly say, hold on a minute, I've got sympathy with a club that's got a 20-point deduction or a 10-point deduction or a massive fine, but we've been abiding by the rules for years. They haven't. They've been caught. They should face a fine. But there will be huge kickback on this. And the ironic thing is, and I'm not the first person to defend Manchester City here, but the reason Manchester City have not been dealt with yet is because there is such a massive amount of charges against them, and they're getting it bogged down in legal arguments. You know, they're going to throw... Man City are a very rich club. One thing they can throw money at, and financial fair play can't stop them doing it, is legal fees, defence lawyers. So they're going to wade this whole debate down every step of the way with legal argument, and it's going to take a long time. In fact, it would be easier if Man City only had one charge. We'd be done a lot quicker. But 115 charges, that makes it a lot longer case to deal with. It could be years, and Man City continue to grow and win and everything as we know. But Everton are going to challenge it. I'm sure Nottingham Forest are going to challenge it. So as much as you can criticise Man City, they've got a lot more charges and they're going to defend them rigorously. Everton are going to do the same. Nottingham Forest will do the same. So we can't moan about the fact that Man City haven't been dealt with yet, when Everton fans will quite rightly be saying, well, we should be challenging it. And I'm sure other clubs will say they're going to challenge it, and they will challenge it, and it will get locked up in legal fees and legal arguments. And, this is the issue, isn't it? What do you think? Get your comments in. My opinion is that you want sporting integrity. We moan about VAR all the time because of inconsistency and unfairness. And you want sporting integrity. And if you want Newcastle to be able to spend their money from Saudi Arabia, then Burnley have a right to say, we've got a billionaire owner from America that's just bought us and he wants to put $1 billion in as well. And then you become the Wild West, because where's the money coming from? You're going to get all sorts of issues then, and everybody's chucking money in. And I'm sure the players will love it because wages will go through the roof. So I think there has to be an integrity to what we're trying to achieve in football here. Some would say footballers are already out of touch because of how much money they earn, and they turn it on and off when they want to, and they're not consistent, etc. So money can be a bad thing in football. And I don't think we should have a Wild West scenario where some billionaire buys the club and then decides that they're just going to chuck all their money into it and dominate sport for the next 10 years. I think there has to be a balance of clubs being run responsibly, of course. And therefore, if you're going to have those rules, if you're going to have rules, they have to have teeth, because no one's going to abide with a rule that's voluntary or gets you a slap on the wrist. So my stance on this is that if clubs do breach rules, then they should be punished. The level of punishment, we need to understand more. Like Everton's 10-point deduction, if they get another one, or Forest or anything, what is it they've specifically done? Is there a margin of error there? Is there a benefit of doubt? Because, if it's just a one-off and they didn't really think it through, and look, if the limit is £100 million and they've gone to 150, tough. You're going to have to take the 10-point deduction, because a 50 million over the limit is a hell of a lot. That could get you a striker that keeps you up. And teams have been relegated last season, and that's where you got to be careful. Teams who get relegated last season, they'll be looking at Forest, and they'll be looking at Everton again, and they'll be going, hold on a minute. And that's the thing, isn't it? That is the thing. So I think clarity of what's happened, and I don't want to see teams getting 10-point deductions because they've gone over the limit by 5-10 million. It shouldn't be a point for every million you go over. There has to be context, and then there has to be consistency. Now, we're asking for something that we want in VAR. So whether the Premier League can deal with this like this, I don't know. But the other thing is, you've got to be very careful about the severity of the punishments you put out there, because if they become too big, then what happens when a Man City does get found guilty, if they do, and they've done 115 times? They won't be playing in the National League. They'll be playing in the bloody Co-op League somewhere. God knows. So I think you've got to be contextual to this, because a 10-point deduction normally would mean relegation in the Premier League. I think Everton have done very, very well to get themselves away from that situation with a 10 points deduction. A 20-point deduction, you're finished. Nobody's staying up. I don't care whether we let Derby County back in. You're not going to stay up. So there has to be context to this, and I think football is so opinionated. My stance is, yes, we do need laws and regulations to maintain an integrity of competition, but we also need clarity of information, i.e. I think some of these rules are very difficult to read into because it's over a 3-year period and you're allowed this and you're allowed that. I think when they release the charges, the Premier League have got to make it very succinct so that everybody understands. And it would be, for example, Premier League club has gone over the limit to what they can spend by £50 million, and we are going to issue a 10-point deduction. I think fans would agree with that, because they go, well, that 50 million quid, that could be the difference between 5th and 4th in Champions League football. That could be the difference between finishing 17th and 18th and getting relegated. And the club that got relegated and didn't and stayed being, look, at the end of the day, it's cheating. If I find out that I've lost the race by a second, but the person who beat me took a shortcut, then I want to win the race. And if I get relegated and a team that didn't get relegated spent £50 million that they shouldn't have done, then that's not fair. So we have to have clarity here. And I sympathise with Everton fans because it's always the fans that suffer. You don't run the calculators. You don't run the accounts. So it's very frustrating. And you know, if this was Manchester United, I 100% empathise. I'd be saying this is not fair. It's a joke because you want to protect your club. We're very tribal. Don't come for our club. But this is why we need the clarity, because if there is evidence of what is effectively cheating, it needs to be put out there in a very clear and precise way so that everyone can look at it. Because maybe if your club has cheated and you do get a 10-point deduction, instead of aiming your frustration at the Premier League, you might want to look at the people who are running your football club. Because if the rules are clear and they go beyond it and take the piss, then you as fans have been cheated, and that's not right. Get your comments in below. Let me know what you think. We are awaiting the clarity on this. I don't think the 10-point deductions for either of these clubs is going to be announced today. I think their breaches will be announced today, and then that will be followed up by that. And obviously, I think there'll be legal arguments afterwards. But I think we need more clarity on what these clubs are actually doing. As I say, you almost need a bloody A-level in maths to understand it. And I think just make it very clear. How much have they gone over by and why? And then let's see. Because the Premier League might be being too strict. Let's wait and see. Thanks for watching. Take care.